Hello and welcome to our second episode of Advisory Advantage, the podcast for accountants and business advisors who want to drill into the practical detail of how to market, sell and deliver business advisory. I'm MC Carter, founder of Practice Paradox, a digital marketing agency working globally with progressive accounting firms, and I'm aided and abetted again by my friend across the ditch,
Richard Francis, CEO and founder of Spotlight Reporting and CA from way back in the day, cloud accountant. And we're delighted, this is our second in our series, delighted to have Shaye Thyer from BDO. And I've had to write down the title, National Cloud and Advisory Specialist. So huge welcome to Shaye, who's become a little bit of I don't like the phrase, but I'm going to use it, a bit of a rock star in cloud accounting in Australia. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And we have MC in a hotel room in San Francisco, is that right?
No,
MC?
I was in San Diego last week attending a digital marketing conference, and now I'm in LA, in Los Angeles.
Nice. Well, I'm here in Wellington. Shaye, you're in
Adelaide.
Nice. So we get around us kind of cloud accountancy types, don't we? So look, I'll let MC kick off.
So Shaye, thanks so much for spending some time with Rich and I today. So why for you is business advisory important? What lights your fire about the business advisory space?
To me, it's a bit of survival, to be honest. We have to love business advisory because it's the future. If we're accountants, that's the future for us. We're not going to have forms to fill out anymore. We're going to have all of our compliance work is going to be digital. So, it's going to transform. It's going to take the flavour of, risk management and risk, mitigation, which smells like advisory anyway. So the whole thing, all of the work that we do is going to turn into business advisory. So, it's important to me. Why do I like it? It's because we have to do it. We have to do the thing.
So it's no longer an optional extra in your view, as it may have been to some firms, say a decade ago.
Not at all. Not at all. We have to be doing it. If yesterday's report from Xero is anything to go by, the firms that are doing really well are the ones that are embracing it. And what I think we'll see, and hashtag not a futurist, but what I predict we'll see is that reports will start to tell us that in fact those firms that aren't embracing it are declining rapidly. That's just what I think.
I'm going to jump in on that answer because I don't think you're telling us the whole answer there. And I say that because that's the angle of we have to do it because the asteroid's coming and I'm looking up and I'm going to be extinct. Why do you want to do it?
Why do I want to do it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I wouldn't be in accounting. I want to do it because I want to help people. I know that doing a really good job at lodging forms with the ATO is incredibly important, but I don't really get anything out of it, to be honest. I don't personally get anything out of it. I like doing things that it doesn't matter if it's a big client, small client, whatever. It could be the smallest little thing that can change. It sounds really dramatic, but can change a person's life. For example, you've got, old mate who's a plumber. He's a plumber, he just has his van and he does plumbing. But all day Sunday, he mucks around with his books and his wife hates it. He misses out on time with his kids. So when we introduce things like cloud accounting, and that means that he doesn't have to do that anymore, that he can just do a bank rec on the lounge, for 5 minutes, a couple of days a week, his life is changed. And that's the reason why business advisory is exciting to me, because you can actually change people's lives. Business is exciting, but at the end of the day, business is a thing that humans do and that, affects people's lives. So that's what I love about it.
That's cool. I mean, the reason I asked that was, that's why I got into advisory, but back in the day, and I've had a few more sleeps than you, I was kind of a bit weird, but now we're seeing your cohort of people coming into the profession expecting to be what I've called entrepreneur accountants. Do you want to unpick that a little bit more about, and where do you see yourself going? You're doing this great work, which is changing lives. Don't be afraid to say it's dramatic because it is changing lives. But where do you go with this? Because you've actually got a huge palette in working for BDO Australia, really large, respected logo accounting and advisory firm. Where do you take this?
So I was really challenged before I started working at BDO. I came out of commerce, came out of small business consulting, and didn't want to go anywhere near practice because my perception of that, certainly the Adelaide market, was that they wouldn't have an appetite for people like me. They wouldn't have an appetite for, a senior person coming in wanting to work with clients that doesn't want to do tax, and I'm definitely not particularly good at tax. So they wouldn't have any use for me because they weren't up to the point where they realised that we actually, this is, well, I thought it was valuable. I know it's valuable now, but at the time it wasn't, perceived as valuable. Where do I want to go with it? I'm not 100% sure. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing now. So lots of my role is about bringing my colleagues along on the journey, educating them about the journey. I guess just moving away some of the noise and actually letting them see the path that's in front of them in terms of how successful they can be, how much of the boring bits they can put down, how much of the cool stuff they can do. And I'm actually getting a lot out of that. It's the same reason I've got, and age is irrelevant, but that I've got, the younger group around me that are going, I actually really love this stuff. I didn't realize this is what it was going to be like when I came into accounting. I thought it would be a little bit boring, but it's good. It's got a good career, and Dad said it was going to be good for me when I went to uni and yada yada. But they actually are really excited about what they're doing. So they're learning things, applying them every day, and then every day is more exciting. And that, I'm a mum, right? So I get the mum effect. I'm like, oh, this is so cute. This is awesome. But I just love seeing them develop. I love seeing them having the opportunities that I never had, because I grew up in a traditional firm, got out of there at light speed because I knew it wasn't for me. So that's probably doesn't answer your question, but that's what I'm enjoying about this role at the moment.
And Shaye, that's the younger cohort. What about some of the older cohort? Any challenges there, bringing them along to moving more into the cloud-enabled advisory space?
Yeah, certainly. And it's not an age thing. It's a fear thing. I think change is scary for anyone at any age of any level of experience. But let's think about, some of my colleagues are absolute experts in their chosen field. They've been incredibly successful doing the thing they know how to do really, really well. And we're coming along and saying, not that that's no good anymore, because of course it's still amazing, but it is, of course, incredibly challenging for them to start to digest, maybe I have to do it a bit different. And it's something I've maybe never done before, or I don't feel like I've got the skill set for that. And again, it's not necessarily an age thing, because we have a huge number of staff across the country and all sorts of very, very diverse, and we see challenges at every level. We've got partners that are, if you drew a picture of them, you would say, oh no, we're going to have trouble with this person. But they embrace it and they love it. They kick goals, and we use them internally, as case studies, and say, if old mate can do it, then everyone can do it, because we never expected that to come from that pocket, but we did, and have a look at how awesome it's going. Similarly, we do rely on our millennials to kick lots of goals, to get really excited about things, and to tell everyone, because they're so good at telling everyone about how good they are, which is awesome. And to sort of influence up. Do you know what I mean? So there's more staff than there are partners and senior people. So I think using that sort of collective influence, it's almost like peer pressure at high school, but in a really positive way. So they're sort of influencing and showing, their managers and their partners what can actually be achieved with clients and how good it makes you feel. I think they're good at, articulating how it makes them feel, and that's a cool thing.
So Shaye, what might be some examples of what does that look like when they're influencing up? What are some examples you can think of things that they're showing and telling, so to speak, to influence up?
Yeah, so we had an example out of Brisbane recently where I can't remember. I don't even know what his title was or whatever. It's irrelevant. But quite a younger guy, just was working with one of his clients, and I think it was in a particular industry that he loves. I can't remember exactly what it was, so I apologise. But let's just pretend he was a rev head and he loved motorsport. So we'll pretend that is, because I don't know what the detail was. But he just used to have lots and lots of open conversations with his client, like you would if you were in sales or you're a BDM, or just if you were having a chat with your mates. Basically, he used to spend a lot of time chatting with his client because he just loved hearing about the goss in this particular business, because he just loved it generally. And what came out of that was opportunities. I know it's not rocket science, but hallelujah, all these things kept popping up in conversation, and he was thinking, well, I can help you with that and I can help you with that. That wasn't the point of the conversation, but it came up in conversation. So when we walked through how some of these bits of service were delivered, so how we got to where we are now, people were quite surprised that it wasn't a hard thing. It wasn't like we were saying, do a handstand, then a cartwheel, and then your client will be impressed. It was just having a chat. It was just being open and listening, and things that we do all the time naturally. And that things sort of organically grew out of that. And I think that was I was so excited about that example. I was like, yes, that's a piece of gold. We've got to tell everybody about that. But
it's a great point, isn't it? That it's humans connecting with humans. So you use
correct.
that as an actual live kind of case study to show, hey, if Jim in Brisbane can do it, anyone else can do it. Was that?
We did, and you'll like this one, Richard, because it did have spotlight reporting in it. And we did a little video, and we did some screen grabs, and did the before and after of how good the CFO feels because he can see all this stuff and it's nice and clean and da 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 da, which was so good. I don't mean to gloss over it. I think it's awesome. But we did that, but we also did the touchy-feely stuff. We did, how did we actually get there? How did the two humans connect? It's like a love story, isn't it? How did that thing happen and then bloom into this, awesome, which at the end of the day is service delivery and fees, but how do we get there and what does it mean?
And what do those steps look like? Oh, sorry, you go, Rich.
I was just going to say, the interesting thing with the humans connecting with humans, it's something we do talk about a lot at Spotlight, but you're in a really large organization, so I know everyone's name here. And even when I worked at PDO way back, there was 100 people, so we kind of knew each other. You're dealing with a national network, and I suppose there's lots of people who are in large organizations or even smaller ones in BDO and thinking, I want to be that change maker. So you've given us a really good example of plucking an internal case study from within your organization to share. But what other things have you done to make sure that not only is the technology that can empower all of this, whether it's Xero or Spotlight or whatever else you're using, can be deployed really well, but the soft skills, and I know MC will love to jump in on this one soon, around marketing and selling, and how do you get those happening properly at scale?
Yeah, we have a lot of room and a lot of opportunity to improve that area of what we do. And to be honest, it's the most challenging because it puts people outside of their comfort zone. So we're asking, accountants who are very, very familiar with the front of their computer and the side of their desk to leave said office, front up to a cafe or a workplace or whatever, and hold an engaging conversation. It can be quite challenging. This is not something that they're used to. And look, we are in the process of developing some structured frameworks around this. But at the moment, what we are trying to tap into is a little bit more organic. So it's using that mentoring concept. We know some of the partners that do it really well. We know some of the managers that do it really well. So we work with them to make sure that they've got enough capacity to mentor anyone that wants to be mentored at this stage. So let's focus on the people who are engaged to begin with, and we of course bring everybody along, but let's make some winners out of that group to start with. But I don't know what the answer is. I think there is a place for structured training. There's certainly a place for learning about how to close a deal and not be a robot and things like that. But I'm just not sure yet what that looks like. We've got a lot of big chunks of challenge that we're working through internally at the moment in terms of getting all of this, all of like delivering all of the things that our accountants need to be able to be really successful in business advisory, and we can't do it all at once. So that's why I'm a bit vague on that one.
Shaye, what do you think of the concept of, let's say, out of every 10 accountants who are in an advisory role, out of every 10 who may have come in because they are highly analytical and intelligent and good at the computational, logical side of things, out of every 10, how many do you think, whether that's in BDO or the profession as a whole, are actually naturally suited to an advisory role, to have these chats, to uncover these pain points and aspirations with clients? What number would you put on that?
It wouldn't be more than 50%. Like, I do acknowledge that it's not for everyone. If anyone looked at my Myers-Briggs, you'd be very confused because I'm actually quite introverted. Not that you'd know that, but I think it just doesn't suit some people. And, my mum makes fun of me and wonders why she sent me to private school when sometimes 1 + 1 = 5, according to Shaye's maths. So, everyone's got their different skill sets. I think, let's just say, at the moment, there might be 30% who, that's their sweet spot. They could do no numbers ever. They could do all the client-facing stuff, and they'd absolutely be amazing at it. And then they have their team that crunch the numbers and do the do the preparation of everything. I think there's another 30 to 40% that can definitely be taught how to do that and can learn and can develop those skills. Perhaps like I have. It's certainly not a natural inclination for me. And then we've got the rest, and like I said, I can't add up, so let's just call it the rest, that it's just not for them. And we're always going to need those people. We're always going to need those people that are awesome at making the numbers work and telling us what they mean, identifying errors, awesome attention to detail, all that sort of stuff. So I think there's a place for all of those type of people in our
Someone has to
industry
do
still.
tax and audit, don't they? So.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a bit like, to use an analogy, it's like a football team. You need a spread across the field, and everyone has different roles. So I'm really interested to hear that view, Shaye, because I think my experience in working with lots of firms around the world would be close to what you're reflecting there. Let's say roughly a third just natural at it. Another third could be trained to do it, and the other third, let them do what they're doing. But I think the big mistake that a lot of coaches and consultants to the accounting profession over the years, they've downplayed the importance of those analytical skills. They just try getting them wrong. Like, they're crucial skills. But what I say to firms is put 2 ladders in terms of career ladders up against the wall. Have an whatever you want to call them, have an advisory track, have a technical track, and that way people can actually go, oh, thankfully, I can just stick on this technical track, keep crunching, grinding. I love doing that. And that's an incredibly valuable role. And then there's no ambiguity. I think, are you a forward or are you a back? Both are equally valid. I know plenty of backs that think they rule the team.
Forwards. I think that's a great point. And I think that's one of the sad things about perhaps where we're at the moment is we have this mishmash of people developing, and some get to a point where they, the roles sort of develop over time. So you get to a senior manager and you're expected to, so you start as a grad, you're expected to be a good doer. You're an accountant, you're expected to be a good doer. You're a manager, you're expected to talk to clients all of a sudden. Holy schmoly, how do I do that? You're a senior manager, you're expected to know how to manage a team properly, you're expected to know how to do performance reviews, all that sort of stuff. You get to whatever's between that and a partner, and all of a sudden you have to learn this thing called BD. What the heck is BD? How do I do that? And how am I supposed to have learnt that? So I think you're dead right. There needs to be two streams, and because each of the roles are equally valuable in their own way. You can't have one without the other. And until we start to recognise that, then people are going to be frustrated, or we're going to be promoting people on the incorrect set of skills, if you get my drift.
I do. I think, one of the wisest things I've ever heard is build on people's strengths. Don't try to shore up their weaknesses, because we've all got natural strengths. Let's just build on those and not try to turn everyone into an all-rounder, because not everyone is.
Shaye, given this problem, you have of this mishmash, as you called it, how, and all accounting firms pretty much would have the same issue unless they've been amazing at who they hire and how they hire. But how do you train differently? But also in a firm like yours, really busy, high profile and all that, how do you free up the time and capacity to really unearth the advisory opportunity and not be just another accounting firm doing 85% compliance with advisory as the icing on the cake? What's changing?
Yeah. So, these are all things we're exploring. So we definitely are traditional in our structure, exactly like I just described. You get to manager, you get to senior manager, blah, blah, blah. What has changed probably in the last couple of years is about, and the guys from New Zealand actually talk about it a lot. So we have secondees that come over from BDO New Zealand all the time. And one of those, my favourite one in the whole world, he's awesome, Andy McDonnell, talks about two-to tackle, which means, what it means is you never go to a client meeting by yourself. You always take someone. If you're senior, you take someone junior, because you'll never get exposed to things above your level unless you are exposed to things above your level. So the point of that is to let go of the scary write-offs and too much whip and blah, blah, blah. Invest in that sort of mentoring idea and take people along with you so that they can, if all they do is sit, look pretty and listen, then you've still gained something, because the next time they might come back and have a debrief and contribute, and then you'll expect them to contribute, and that's how they develop. That's something that we are embracing. Like I said, we've got a lot of opportunity to improve, the overall structure, but as you can imagine, in a massive firm like ours, that's going to take some doing.
But even that, though, Shaye, is a huge shift. I can imagine a lot of partners chewing a wasp over having to take sidekicks out as part of their professional development. Is it rolling out across the one or two shiny button advisory partners, or is this a really big initiative across BDO? Without telling secrets, it'll just stay between us, obviously.
Yeah, no, look, this is no targeted campaign. This is not like a national rollout or anything. This is a concept that was introduced sort of around August last year, in working a little bit more closely with Andy from New Zealand, and it's part of the like you described, those shiny partners and the guys that are succeeding at the moment. It's about that, and I think that's fine. It's not about a pilot, because I feel like a pilot can either keep going or stop, but I don't feel like this should stop or will stop. I feel like this is a demonstration of, capability. This is a demonstration of, do you know what? Doesn't actually affect my whip that much, and I get heaps out of it because my team's now more useful. I can delegate easier because they're more capable, and I can identify earlier whether they're a doer or a talker, whether they're an advisor or they're an analytical person.
So partners are definitely learning too as part of this process, which I think is really important.
Of course, it's equally important to bring partners along on the journey as it is the staff.
And can I ask, Shaye, what's your view? One of the things I'm passionate about is the accounting profession making a shift to attract the people that are the connectors and who really do love, and even though it sounds like hyperbole and a cliche, changing lives, but the people who really do want to make a difference. What's your view on how the accounting profession can attract more people?
I think the accounting profession needs to do some thinking about how they reward those people. I think it's a fundamentally different role. I think we are still too time obsessed. Back when I was a finance manager in an accounting firm, how did we work out the salary for that guy we were going to hire? That's right. We worked out the charge out rate and then we times it out and went, okay, yep, that smells about right. Nothing to do with market, nothing to do with value, nothing to do with how much fees, or what's the level of fees they could bring in and what is the value of that to our business. So it's a very short-sighted, in my opinion, it's a big opinion, very short-sighted way of showing a valuable person that they are valuable. So I feel like we have challenges in attracting those type of people now. To change that, we need to revisit how we do that. I think there's more and more opportunity. I feel like if I went into market for that role that I was looking for 2.5, 3 years ago, that I probably would find it. But again, is that particular business ready? And I'm not saying to pay me $1 million because that's not what I'm after, but am I going to be recognized for that skill set? Am I going to be recognized as the one that does the high value work, that brings in fees, that does all of that stuff, which is hugely different from what the roles look like at the moment.
Yeah, it's so true that what gets measured gets rewarded. And, I've seen it in firms over the years that talk the talk and we are going to be proactive and we are going to do value add. And then the staff tell us afterwards, I hate sitting through training because we're not allowed to go home until we put 6 hours on the clock, and anything that takes me away from billing time, God, I hate that phrase. They resent it because they're going to get home later to their family. So it's all these mixed messages in a lot of firms about what's measured.
For us, guys who went over the fence from a large firm to join Spotlight actually, and he saw me at his regional office, and he used Spotlight, and it was like a special treat. Once or twice a year he got to do a Spotlight for this particular client, and the rest of the year he was in his little cubicle, and there's this real strange thing I'd like you to unpick for us a little bit, Shaye, where a profession goes on and on about advisory. I go on and on about advisory. I love it. It's why I got into the profession and did what I did. And why MC's there as well, trying to help us all do this. And all the surveys, the Zero report said 90% want to do it, and the forecasting and budgeting. Why don't we do it? Why aren't we changing our business models? Why aren't we rewarding the people that actually bring in the high value, high caliber work, who have a bit of charisma and can talk to the customers, as much as the guy who can do a wonderful memo on tax? And what needs to change? I know there's timesheets to throw out and all of that, but if you could break the firm or the model and reassemble it, what would you do?
Corporates, and not corporates that smell like partnerships, because let's be realistic, even if it is an accounting firm, it's still a partnership. It's still run like a partnership. My personal opinion is that that is, a brilliant reward for people that come up through the business that want to aspire to be a partner. It's a fantastic accolade, something to be really, really proud of, and by no means am I taking anything away from that. But I feel like some of the nuances around that kind of structure limit the business. I would love to run an accounting firm like a business. Do you know what I mean? And when you sort of break some of that down, it's very challenging. We're talking about divvying up the pie a bit. We're talking about people who are not partners and haven't tipped in and all that sort of thing, maybe getting a bit more than just their salary because they've just brought in $500,000 worth of fees that the firm is going to benefit from.
A SaaS company where you've got to give everyone shares.
Look, I'm not an expert in structuring,
I love it.
Disclaimer, but I just feel like the frustrations coming out of commerce, back from practice into commerce, back into practice, some of these things seem like no-brainers, and for all of my colleagues that I work with that are brilliant with their clients and give lots of advice about running their businesses and structuring their businesses, and they're very tax effective, but what does the rest of it look like? What does the governance look like? What does the staff engagement look like? What does the culture look like? That's stuff that makes businesses really successful. And I guess the irony of it is trying something new might just make it more profitable.
There's
Win-win.
that topic of change again.
Correct. All about change.
Some embrace it, some run from it. Let's flip it around, Shaye, if we can, for those listening to us now on the podcast. What are some of the quick wins for firms out there wanting to make the shift to doing more advisory work to their with their clients? What do you see as some of the quick wins, the low-hanging fruit for a firm to move towards that?
Yep. Demonstrate capability for free. Don't service a client for free because that's silly, but demonstrate capability. So an example of that we use is if we've got a compliance only client, we know there's a bunch of stuff we could do for them, but we've just got to get that foot in the door. We wrap up their tax work, we push their work into spotlight reporting, for example, and then we slip it into their pack. So when we're having that meeting, that tax year-end meeting, I don't even know what it's called anymore, the thing you do after you do the compliance work, you can go, oh, and by the way, the other day we were talking about these couple of challenges you're having. Do you think something like this might help you? And they go, oh, they're good. The numbers might not be perfect, but it's not the point. It's a demonstration of capability. From there, you can develop that into an engagement. And then all of a sudden, you have a monthly reporting engagement, which is just gold. What other tips have I?
So, Shaye, could I just ask a couple of questions within that? What are the steps between showing them a far better explanation of their lead and lag indicators using Spotlight, let's say, and then becoming a paying client on advisory with quarterly or monthly deliverables? How do you go from providing that as a value add and actually having them see that, well, that is worth X a month, let's say, and getting them to sign on the dotted line? What do you see are the actual visible behaviors, so to speak, along that process?
So I guess the first thing is obviously to get the client excited about what they've got in front of them. So we need to be careful that we're always linking the client's needs, the challenges that they've articulated with us or that we've pressed them for, with a thing we can deliver. It's not just about here's a thing we can do, here's a thing we can do, here's a thing we can do. This is something that's going to help you in your business. Hopefully some of those conversations you've had allows you to perhaps quantify some of the effect of it. So you might say, okay, you wait till the 25th of the month to get information for last month, right? So month end is so slow that you don't get it till the third week of the month. What are you missing out on there? And they might be able to tell you. They might be able to say, well, I didn't know if we should have run that advertising campaign because I wasn't sure for last month and how that campaign went. So they had no information for 3 weeks to be able to do that. They've missed the boat. So they've missed a month effectively of sales because they couldn't make a decision. So what you might be able to do in there is quantify the value of that. So you can then say, well, we could do this. You're going to get it on the second day of the month. That's going to allow you to do X, Y, and Z. What's that worth to you? And they might quantify that themselves. And then, of course, you can quote your fee and it's going to be make everything great. Sorry, I'm not trying to gloss over it.
So one of the things they're using there, Shaye, is contrast. They're seeing the potential upside of the growth, whether that's top line and or bottom line, and then making the monthly retainer, let's say, look insignificant, relatively speaking.
Correct. Yeah. Either make it pay for itself or make it irrelevant. Make it so valuable that the price is irrelevant.
What's been your experiences there, Richard, with getting the clients to see the value? Put those numbers in front of them.
Yeah, I think having, you do have to have some process around that, but I think Shaye's kind of hit the nail on the head, really, that, I used to say when I was in practice, because we had, $40,000, $50,000 a year clients that you're only as good as your last meeting. You always have to show value. As soon as you act, smell, and talk like an accountant, who's just a crunch shop up the road,
Yeah.
value time, you have those conversations. So there's also something that goes into that, because again, as Shaye's alluded to, if you listen and ask the right questions, the client just about sells themselves. And the next thing you know, they've asked for X, Y, and Z on your menu, and you'd use Practice Ignition or some other tool to bundle it all up nicely, send it off, pen the doc or something, get them to sign it, and you're away laughing. And the next thing you know, it's actually easier than people think to move someone from 5,000 to 10,000, 20,000. It does become a real art to get them further up a few issues and things to sort out. But we've just got to start trying. And I patience in a big firm to do that and to bring hundreds of people on the journey. I had to go small firm because I could just bully one or two people into doing what I wanted. So you must be quite diplomatic, which is kind of cool. But of course, you can make a big impact in a big firm like BDO. So hats off.
Thanks.
Shaye, one last
Pretty
question.
scary some days, I've got to admit.
Well, if you're not scaring yourself on a regular basis, you're really not trying, are you? Not stretching yourself.
Touche.
So my last question for you, Shaye, is for someone listening to us right now, what's one thing they could do differently starting today or tomorrow if they're listening to this tonight, that would help them grow their non-compliance advisory? One thing they could do differently that maybe right now they might be doing as a typical firm, an old-fashioned firm.
Old-fashioned firm.
Yeah, one thing they could do differently.
I will make sure that you meet with every single one of your clients at least once a year. Don't send their tax return pack in the mail. Or I was going to say digitally, but if they're traditional, they're probably not doing that either. So I make sure you meet them, because when you meet people, you talk more. You can talk about the weather, you can talk about family, you can talk about business, and opportunities come from conversation. So you need more chances to have conversation.
Perfect. I
That's
love it.
it.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to the quality and frequency of meaningful conversations, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
That's absolutely perfect. I think it's a great place to stop. We're finishing on a good bit of wisdom there, because again, we're circling back to humans connecting to humans, and if everyone just did that, the work will emerge, won't it? So I want to thank you, Shaye, for giving us this time, sharing some of the insight. Really interesting journey you're on as a national cloud and advisory specialist at BDO, making a real name for yourself in the market as one of these kind of change makers, rain makers for your brand. So I think you've shared some really good stuff and really candid as well today. So a really big thank you from me.
Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Shaye.